So if you've ever been to Hong Kong, it's almost like every other shop or any station has a Hong Kong style bakery. And the baked bread is almost like a brioche, a cross between sort of French and British baking. Definitely influenced from the West, not Chinese originally. And so you kind of fill your bread with all different ingredients and fillings. First thing I'm going to do is just get that butter sort of moving around in there, and the flour, so the dry ingredients. This is strong bread flour. That's not my tea. So I've got my butter and my strong bread flour in there. I've got fast action dry yeast. Now you could mix a bit of warm water with the fast action dry yeast and just sort of let it bubble up. Or if the water's warm enough, then it will just work quite quickly on this anyway. Sugar to feed the yeast. It's quite sweet, but not over sweet. And then a good teaspoon of salt. And then my water, I'm going to gradually add into this mix until all the flour is kind of collected off the sides of the mixer. I highly recommend, even if you're using a mixer, at some point to stop and feel the dough to see how sort of tactile it actually is. So don't go too fast on this. Just gradually add your water. It's worth sort of adding more at the beginning and then going slower once you've got sort of half the amount of water in, just so it collects nicely. Now you could of course do this by hand, but it is strong bread flour, so it's quite tight, very elastic. I'm just saving my energy really. A little bit faster now. So this is at a good knead. It's got a really good texture now. We didn't put any more or less water into it, and you can see when you sort of push into it and roll that it's got a really nice smooth finish to it. And with that warm water and the sugar over the next sort of hour and a half of resting, this should now sort of start to get nice and airy. It's already starting to work. You can see the yeast starting to bubble up in there. So I quite like to cover it in a little bit of oil and then either damp cloth or some cling film, and then let that sit in a really nice warm place for the next hour and a half. So after an hour and a half of resting, my dough has started to sort of double in size. It's got that nice sort of airy pockets. You can see that. Definitely more fluffy already. So I'm going to knock it back at this point and then give it a bit more time. And you can see how soft that is now. So just push into it. And then bring that back into a nice round piece of dough again. Let that sit for another half an hour just to relax once more before I start to shape it, and then we can bake. My dough has had its extra half hour rest and it's nice and airy now. You can see those air bubbles in there. And of course, as I'm working on this dough now, it's almost getting another knockback. So I'm just rolling this into a nice cylinder before I take chunks of dough. I want them quite big because the frankfurters I've got are quite long. So just sort of doing one last knead, getting these balls of dough into a nice smooth finish. And much like making baos here or dumplings, this is what we like to call at school, what pinchy pinchy, twisty twisty. I'm pushing in with my thumb and pinching and twisting the dough back together. kind of just punched out any excess, like large bubbles of air from this last knead. I'm going to work on one at a time. So it's quite simple from here. You just roll this into a long frankfurter shape, pretty much. It needs to be a bit longer than the actual frankfurter. You could use like a posh or organic style sausage or anything like that, but that wouldn't be classic Hong Kong style hot dog. So just want to wrap this round the frankfurter, and you want to tuck the last bit underneath. And then your frankfurter hot dog just sit on there, ready to go. Try and make it as even as possible. It's always best to sort of roll out from the center of the cylinder. So from in to the outside. They do need a bit of space because they obviously are going to rise. And you just want to egg wash generously over the top. And then if you want, you can sprinkle some sesame seeds over the top of that as well. Completely optional. So you let those sit for about 15 minutes just for that last rise, and then we're going to whack them in the oven 180 degrees C for about 20 minutes. So you can see what this lovely glaze from the egg wash. So let's have a little taste of this. That's a lot of fun. Reminds me of Hong Kong, but it's even better that it's homemade. The sweetness of the bread really works and balances out the saltiness of the frankfurter, and I think that's why it's so Moorish. Real comfort food, but cooked from scratch at home.